Yo, what up? It's B-Cide. You know, this album cycle feels different than anything I've ever done before, and I've been thinking a lot about why that is. And I think when I look back at my earlier albums, they came from hunger, from chaos, from survival mode, from being an angry young man trying to figure out who I was and where I fit and everything. And a lot of that music was fueled by ego, sex, frustration, and the need to be seen. The need to prove something and the need to be louder than the next person to make sure nobody overlooked me. Make shocking stuff. And I knew music was a business back then, but I didn't really understand it the way that I do now. I understand it in now I understand it like really in practicing it. I wasn't really thinking about longevity back then. I wasn't really thinking about stability. I definitely wasn't thinking about responsibility. And that's for sure. I was thinking about getting through the moment. And that's what it was. And as I got older, music slowly became more of a business than I ever imagined it could be. Not in a soulless way, but in a very real way. You could start to understand what it actually takes to keep something alive for decades. You start to understand how much energy it costs when you don't build things correctly behind the scenes. And at the same time, you start changing as a person. Even 10 or 15 years ago, I was still making songs about asses shaking, wild nights, and the same themes I had been circling around for decades. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's totally fine. The music had its place. It came from who I was at the time and everything, but it's not where my voice is strongest anymore. And that's the truth. This new album, MonSter, comes from a completely different place and point of view. When I say these are grown man songs, I don't mean it in a bragging way. I mean it in responsibility, accountability, lived experience, perspective that only comes from actually surviving things you didn't plan for. And getting hit with multiple sclerosis changed everything for me. It really did. It forced me to slow down. It forced me to look at myself honestly. It forced me to sit with pain, fear, depression, anxiety, uncertainty in a way that I never had to deal with that before. And once you go through something like that, you don't write the same way anymore. And I wasn't making songs like Gravity Suit 20 years ago. I wasn't writing lines like every day's a mission feels like dragging chains, mind running laps while my body stays in pain, but I lace up my soul, yeah, I'm built for the strain, a king in the struggle, wearing scars like a name. And that kind of writing doesn't come from imagination. It comes from experience, from living in your body every day and learning how to carry what you've been handed. And this era of my music is about being a voice for people who feel unheard, people dealing with disease, with mental health, with the weight of just existing in a world that doesn't slow down for you. I know there's hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people who feel the exact same way that I do. Even if their situation looks different on the surface. And this album is for them. It's meant to be a release, a place to put things that don't have anywhere else to go. Another reason that this album feels different is it's actually like a collaboration. And I don't mean that with like a rapping partner. I mean it like I'm working with my friend Ken K. W. Williamson on MonSter, And it definitely doesn't feel like working with beat makers. It feels like working with a partnership, like a band. And we both put 50-50 into everything creatively and intentionally. And there's trust there. And there's ownership on both sides. And it's awesome. I don't have to worry about who owns what or whether something's solid. We're building this together, and that changes the entire energy of the whole project. And MonSter feels complete in a way that's hard to explain unless you've actually lived it. This album isn't me trying to be louder. It's not me trying to be younger. It's not me chasing. It's not me chasing relevance or trends. It's me stepping fully into who I am right now. And more than anything, I'm grateful that I'm still here to make this album. Not gratitude for myself, fuck that, but gratitude for the people who actually give a shit, the ones who listen, the ones who connect, the ones who see themselves in the music. It honestly feels like a whole reinvention. It feels like starting over with 25 years of experience and 15 plus albums behind me. Like being handed $200 and being told, now go build something real with that and let's see what happens. And, MonSter represents exactly where I am in my life, in my career, in my voice. And, for the first time in a long time, I'm completely at peace with that. And it's so awesome. I want to thank everybody that comes out and checks out the TikToks on a daily basis, listens to the music, streams it, buys merchandise, just comments on a YouTube video, tells me that it made their day or some shit like that. It's fucking awesome. So stay strong, stay wicked. It's B-Cide. I'll see y'all on the flip. Peace.